You're live.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is October 26, 2020, and you are listening to the new WCEG Network on WCEGTalkRadio.com. If you're on the internet and you're there, just click the live stream tab, or you can watch this on your smart TV via YouTube. Just type in WCEG Network. I am Norman A. Carter Jr., your host for this special edition of Issues and Answers, and I'll be with you for the next hour or so. We are the Worldwide Community Empowerment Group, where we speak life into the community. You may like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and on Instagram at WCEG underscore talk underscore radio, and also at WCEG Network. Last but not least, the topics and opinions are those of the show host and my illustrious guest, and not the WCEG Network. Thank you for your continued support. I'd just like to say welcome, welcome, welcome to our special guest today, Mrs. Tamara Johnson-Shealey, who is a candidate for Georgia's U.S. Senate seat. That's United States Senate seat. She's going to represent us in Washington, D.C. A little small introduction I'll give you. She is a Georgia native born, raised in Chatham County with deep family roots in Effingham County, Georgia. She came from humble beginnings and has never forgot from where she came. She has lived in DeKalb County and Gwinnett County for the past 26 years. She built a business as a nail salon owner for 10 years and worked as a licensed nail technician for 18 years. And I really want to stop there because this business owner, this entrepreneur, let her career as a licensed nail technician lead her into where she is today. And it's such an interesting story that I would like for her to relate that to you. Mrs. Shealey, you have
Yes,
the
sir.
floor.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to say thank you for allowing me to be your guest today. Yeah, politics and beauty. People don't see the correlation. Like, how do you go from the beauty and barber industry to politics? And I started watching my industry politically because people don't know that the hair on your head, your nails, any kind of personal care services, it is very political. This is your health. This is your safety. So it is very, very political. And there's a lot of money to be made in the beauty and barber industry. So it is hyper political.
Excellent. I I didn't sell my hair, I just lost it. But
But that's okay.
but I see where you're concerned about that interest. Really, I mean, you've been involved in the political portion uh, of life for several years, and it all began with noticing some needs as far as regulations in your profession. Would you like to
Mhm.
relate to that a little bit?
Hmm. Yeah, I started watching two things. I started watching beauty and barber professionals get second jobs. I started watching them. When I came into the industry, I came in at a peak back in the 90s where professionals were making six figures and they lived very well, and it was like they were. I came in and I just saw the magnitude of where this business could take you doing something that you absolutely love, and I fell in love with it. I never was into the hair, but I mastered the nail part of the industry. So when I came in at this peak, I over some years I started seeing this gradual decline, and I started seeing things shift and change. So I started going to our state board meetings right here in Georgia and started really paying attention to what these people were actually doing. And honestly, it wasn't a whole lot. And I'm like, no wonder the industry is dying. There's not a whole lot that's happening to help sustain it. So then I started seeing the health and safety standards of our industry at a demise. Like people didn't feel safe going into nail salons because we were having incidents where people were dying across the country from getting pedicure services.
Right.
We were having overexposure to chemicals. Professionals were getting cancer and people were getting sick from working in a salon environment. So this whole shift from, the monies and the health perspective, both of these, and I said something has to be done. So I started two organizations and I called them twins because they both came to me at the same time. One is Politics, Beauty, and Barber, where we can address this from a legislative perspective, where we can be involved in policy that affects the beauty and barber industry. And then I started the Concerned Beauty and Barber Professionals, where we can address the health issues. Pre-COVID, we were already, as an organization, we were already looking at the health and safety standards, addressing our health and safety standards in the beauty.
Okay. Excellent. Excellent. I'd like to get into some of your platform questions, if you don't, platform positions, if you don't mind. And I know one of the things that's much in the forefront of many of our listeners on a national basis is the gun control laws. And I see that one of your platform positions is protecting the Second Amendment. And you have some other concerns in that area. Would you care to expound on those?
I'm a country girl. Like, honestly, I was born in Chatham and Effingham County, but every summer as a kid and every weekend as a kid, I was in the country. So I had this dual life where I was in the city, but I also was, a country girl. All my family is still relatively in the country. And everybody's packing. Everybody's packing in the country. So, they shoot, they hunt, a gun is like second nature. So I do believe that we should, have the right to bear arms. I do believe in the Second Amendment. But I also believe that we have to expand our background checks. Let's just be mindful of who are these people that are actually getting these guns. And I've traveled around the state, and I'm sure we'll talk about that a bit too during this campaign trail. And, I heard from in these rural areas how these young people have, major weaponry, not just a gun or a gun that they use to hunt, but there's like major, like serious weaponry around rural Georgia. And there's a lot of crime and things are happening. So I just want us to be mindful that we need to know where these guns are with our background checks. And then at these gun shows, you can just walk in and buy a gun. We need to make sure that we're closing these loopholes around our guns, and then stricter penalties for our dealers. They need to, make sure they're doing their job as well. So, but I absolutely believe in the Second Amendment.
Okay, excellent. We're in the midst of, everyone has to acknowledge with open eyes, a huge racial divide in this country, as if we're revisiting, in my mind, things that occurred in the 60s. Except this is on steroids now because we have social media. And one of the things that's in one of the major issues on your platform is the establishment of a federal agency for American descendants of slavery. And as part of that, you have a huge reparations plan. And I'd like to know if you would like to expound on that a bit, because I'm sure that is a concern among many of your constituents.
Yeah, it is. Let's talk about the American descendants of slavery. Who are we? I'm actually going to screen share here. I see her screen. Can I share my screen with you?
Well, let's see as we muddle through this little.
The one thing about live broadcasting and technology is, you kind of go with the flow.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, I don't see where I can share my screen, but I see her screen. Well, we'll talk through it. I wanted to kind of share with you why reparations and why this is so important. Let's first talk about, you said you're 60s. This is on steroids from what you remember. I'm a 70s baby, so I don't have the same memories that you have or experiences that you have. But those of us who are descendants of slavery, we know who we are. You know, we're not that far removed. And your 60s experience and my experience here as a baby of the 70s, I still remember my aunt, for example. She's in her 70s now, and she used to tell me stories. And she would tell me these stories about quarters. And I'm this little kid. I didn't know the quarters. I thought maybe was a subdivision or maybe a town. But she would tell me these stories about the quarters. Now, this is a woman in her 70s now. And she has these vivid memories of growing up in the quarters, which now I know. My aunt was telling me stories about the slave quarters.
Right.
And I didn't know as a kid. But, you know, those of us who are descendants of slaves, we're like again, I said, we're not that far removed. I want to talk about why reparations is so important. Right now, we have a racial wealth gap where white America has 10 times more wealth, 10 times more wealth than Black America. Of the trillions of dollars, Black America only has 2.6% of the wealth. And that's pretty concentrated. We'll think about like our athletes and our entertainers. That's concentrated wealth. The rest of us, we're broke.
Okay.
We're broke as a people. So the data has also shown that by 2053, Black America will have zero net wealth. We are literally on our way to becoming a permanent bottom caste in this country. And we have to be mindful that we need redress, we need repair, we need reparations in order to for us to survive as a people. And if we don't do this now, we might not make it. I mean, COVID is just in this season alone, look how many small businesses have been hurt. Imagine these small Black businesses that are really, really suffering right now. So reparations is a debt that stems from slavery, to Jim Crow, to Black codes, to convict leasing, to no New Deal, no GI Bill, redlining, war on drugs, mass incarceration, systemic injustices after systemic injustices, compounded, accrued. This is a debt that is old. This country was built on the backs. We were property. We were the capital. This country was built on us. So when we go to explain reparations, that's it. That's it in a nutshell. That is reparations and why we are owed this debt. My candidacy, I think she's giving me ability to share my screen. Not yet. Host disabled. I still don't have the ability yet.
Okay.
My stance and my platform for reparations is to create the infrastructure. I have my undergrad degree is my bachelor's degree is in computer information systems. My master's is in law. So I want us to create the agency. Right now, we have a bill over in Congress that has been introduced since the 80s by John Conyers that is now being carried by Sheila Jackson Lee. This bill is HR 40. HR 40 is a study. And I just gave you all the reasons why we need reparations, which this is what this study will basically conclude is all the things that I just said. And this work has been done. Economists have already done this work. So my goal is to create the actual housing, the infrastructure over in the Senate, the agency, like we have the VA for veterans. How about the RA, Reparations Administration?
Okay.
That is my goal.
That's a lofty goal that's going to require a coalition and not just you. And I do believe, just from what I'm hearing politically, at least by the news media, that there is a growing support for that. And I can, even though I'm a child of the 40s, I can relate to that because there is a purposeful, wow, look at here.
Can you see it?
What do we have here?
Good, we can see it. I wanted to walk you through like what, a little bit more of what I was talking about.
Okay.
All right. So here we are, the reparations for American descendants of slavery. And I chose this picture because this is actually a family in Savannah back in the 1850s that was picking cotton. So I kind of wanted to bring it home for us.
Okay.
Let's talk about why reparations. We're going to walk through this. And this is another picture. This is actually Cockspur Island over in Georgia, right here in the state of Georgia as well, another slave family. But who are we? This is a movement. The American Descendants of Slavery is a movement that has been launched nationally by Yvette Carnell and Antonio Moore. And ADOS stands for American Descendants of Slavery. And it's those of us who seek to reclaim and restore the critical national character of the African-American identity and experience grounded in lineage. And according to Yale historian Dale Blight, by 1860, there were more millionaires, and they were all slaveholders, living in the lower Mississippi Valley than anywhere else in the United States. In the same year, the nearly 4 million American slaves were worth $3.5 billion, making them the largest single financial asset in the entire US economy, worth more than all manufacturing and railroads combined. We were the capital in this country. We were the currency in this country, Black bodies. From slavery to Jim Crow, we experienced a destruction of wealth through federally supported discriminatory practices. And I went through them again: slavery, Jim Crow, Black codes, convict leasing, no New Deal, no GI Bill, redlining, war on drugs, mass incarceration. What does ADOS need to do? Those of us who are descendants of slaves, we have to demand reparations. We are descendants of this system of slavery. We have to demand it, and we must demand that America close this racial wealth gap. Reparations is the making of amends for a wrong that has been done by paying monies to otherwise help or otherwise helping those who have been wronged. Now, has the United States paid reparations before? Yes. The forced internment of 120,000 Japanese Americans in camps during World War II. Survivors received an apology and $20,000 each in reparations. And by 1998, 80,000 survivors had collected their share. Yes, they have paid reparations to the Native Americans, belated payment to unjustly seized land. To the Native Hawaiians, they paid reparations. Tuskegee Experiment, they paid reparations. The United States has proven unwilling to grapple with the enormity of its injustices stemming from slavery. We are in our next civil rights movement, and we must demand reparations. Where is ADOS now? And that's the data I just gave to you, that by 2053, Black America will have zero net wealth. That white America is 10 times, they have 10 times the wealth that we do. And of 13% of this population, we only have 2.6% of this nation's debt. Black heads of households, 2.6% of this nation's wealth. Black heads of households with a college degree have 2/3 the net worth of white head of households who never finished high school. So even with education, we're still on the bottom. How do we do this? And this goes back to my explanation where I was going to go into about creating this infrastructure, the reparations administration, where we will have an agency specifically designed to address our needs. And I do talk about cash payments with this agency. I talk about the need to create, okay, let me go back a step. Who are we? And we have to have a database. We have to have a database that says, I'm a descendant of slave, you're a descendant of slave, she's a descendant of slave. So we have to create the legal definition of American descendants of slavery, and also establish a federal agency to collect, manage, and maintain a national registry, a database of ADOS, and create policy to address the needs of ADOS, including but not limited to reparations in the form of cash payments, low to no interest home loans, low to no interest small business loans, set aside opportunities for government contracts, college tuition reimbursement, student loan debt cancellation, and funding for our HBCUs. reparations preparation, and that's something that we can kind of dive into, because so many people say, you know, what we might do if we get some money. You know, there's this stereotype that some of us going to go out and buy Jordans and jewelry. You know, they say all these negative things about what we could possibly do with reparations. But the majority of us, I'm almost sure, will do the right thing. We will clean up our communities, we will fix our homes, we will buy homes, we will do a lot of amazing things with reparations. So, but when does it happen? Between slavery and Jim Crow, there was this Reconstruction era. This was the most prosperous time for us as a people. This was the most transitional time in our history. We were a determined people and we made great strides. What did we do to reinvent ourselves, create community, and begin to amass wealth? So the same things we did when we came out of slavery to amass wealth and to pull ourselves up by these boots and these bootstraps that we didn't have is what we're going to have to do now. And that's my presentation.
Hey, thank you. Serious thank you. And you know what I find very timely about this, and I'm not part of your campaign or anything, but just this week, when you talk about the Reconstruction era, just this week or last week, they uncovered the graves of several people from Tulsa, Oklahoma, from the Tulsa riots. And these were people who had done exactly what you said. They became business people. They established themselves a very fruitful and burgeoning economic structure in Tulsa, Oklahoma. These Black people and their businesses were destroyed. They were slaughtered. They were murdered. Businesses, homes burned down, and they're just recovering some of these bodies just this past week. That's been reported. And that's part of this where we talk about systemic racism and things that people, the part of the history that keeps getting rewritten or erased, is that there were a lot of injustices done, and there were things that the United States has failed to live up to their responsibilities. I know going back years ago, I don't know whether it would still exist, but if you were a Native American and your grades were halfway decent, you could go to college free. We've never had that. But anyway, once I get part of your campaign committee the next time around, when you're going for re-election, we can bring all that up.
Absolutely.
So much to get it. I mean, we could talk for an hour about that. But you do talk about public education and higher education. And I believe you talked a little bit about that, where we're bringing equitability and in the support of K-12 through public schools and college education, universities, HBCUs. You did talk about that. Let's talk about criminal justice reform. I'm going to let you talk about that, which is
actually
very
saw
close to my heart.
Yeah, I actually saw an interesting article just yesterday that someone came across my feed, and someone actually sent it to me, where they're talking about police retraining. And I thought it was an excellent idea, where they have these months of training and then you can become a police officer. They want to create a full curriculum where police now would have to, take psychology, take these classes that will, really help develop them as police officers versus the training that they get now. And I thought it was a very interesting perspective to how we address policing in this country and police reform.
I think that's great. Not to give myself a plug, but I talk a little bit about that in my book, my autobiography. I'm a retired police officer. Very much involved in police reform. Yes, ma'am. I really am, and it's a topic I think that there's not a lot of the people who can really be a part of that conversation are people who have been through it and lived through it, and I'm talking about people such as I, and not necessarily your politicians, because then you get the political view, because there is a need. There's a huge need for that, and I'm glad that you brought that up. Mental
Another
health.
thing I noticed, another thing I also was like social workers, and these are just ideas that I'm just loving how we're starting to have this conversation around, police reform and criminal justice reform. They were talking about social workers actually riding with the officers and being a part of some of these calls. And I thought that was an excellent idea, in addition to community policing, where you have people that live in the community actually police the community. So I'll let you kind of jump in, and see, this is where legislators get it wrong. My job is to listen to people like you who have this lived experience. And then my job is to go and legislate, not for me to tell you what to do. So I really want to hear what you have to say.
Well, one of my suggestions is that people such as you, and especially on the more successful part of your endeavor, that participate in ride-alongs with police officers, right? Not just the police officers on the street, but your detectives and your other investigators to get that full picture, because there's a lot that you can't see and understand from the outside. Yeah, and training. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you. And training needs to be ongoing. Boy, I could talk about that forever. But yeah, you've got great groundwork here. So thank you. And we really need your voice in the Senate. Trust me, and your ideas. And you're not only talking about you really come from rural Georgia, if I'm correct, and you have some
country girl.
Okay, that's what I'm talking about. What I like to say, rural. I'm the city guy. I'm the city guy. But you have some ideas for revitalizing the rural communities in Georgia. I'd like to hear about those.
So this past August, I rented a small RV and spent the entire month around really rural Georgia. I got outside of the metro area and really spread myself out around rural Georgia. And I can tell you that, some of the things that I saw, like Talbot County, for an example. Talbot County doesn't have a hospital, nor do they have a grocery store. The entire county. A lot of as I traveled around, my internet and my phone service, internet is a luxury, right? But my phone service was even choppy around rural Georgia. And it just shows you how neglected our rural areas are, as if these people are forgotten. And I just want to see us do better. I want to see us support our rural communities the same way we do the metro area. And it's heartbreaking because I'm a country girl. And one thing I can say about rural areas that we appreciate, it's very peaceful. We don't have the big city life. There's uniquely different. And it's something that, rural people that live in these rural areas, I appreciate, and they appreciate too. But they need the basic necessities, the internet, the phone services, the hospitals, the damn grocery stores. I was angry to know that these people don't have access to a grocery store. They're eating there's convenience stores and there's little stores, but not a real grocery store with fresh fruits and vegetables and, fresh, just it was heartbreaking.
And those are quality of life issues. And it's amazing how government officials for generations have forgotten about the rural areas, not just in Georgia, but I can talk about the same thing in Pennsylvania and other states, where they become forgotten about once people get into office. How about immigration? Can you tell me about your immigration policies?
Well, my last semester at Emory, getting my master's degree in law, I took a citizenship and immigration class. And when I tell you, and the professor made it quite clear, she said, you will not grasp the magnitude of this with this one class. You will not. The laws in our immigration system are so, just, the book itself was probably like this thick.
Okay.
So in one semester, we weren't able to dive in, but I have enough of an overview to understand that we need immigration reform. Well, one thing that I am very I'm intentional about in what I say with my immigration policy is that we have to make sure, and I believe in immigration and people being able to be citizens of this country. But I want to make sure in the midst of that, that we're taking care of our people here in this country first. And I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that. And I've said it, but like I said, I do believe that we definitely have to have some reform with our immigration system.
It's a great, our immigration system is actually rooted in the 1950s, the Red Scare, and they haven't changed much since then. One of the things I hear about, this is probably not on your profile, but just to get you to thinking, there's a lot of talking about politicians getting into government, getting into the Senate, Congress, and the one thing that I keep hearing is reaching across the aisles to get things done, which is great because that's the way that this country functions. But in actuality, what we have now in our Congress and in our Senate is the my way or the highway philosophy. So how would you work through that?
Oh, you know what? I'm gonna go back a step and tell a quick story, and then I'm gonna answer that question. So I am, I'm a Democrat. I run as a Democrat, and I am a Democrat. However, all Democrats not right, and all Republicans are not wrong.
Thank you.
And I found that out in the inner workings of being inside of this Democratic Party. And there's ideas on the other side of the aisle that are great, just like there's ideas on this side of the aisle. And I'm very intentional about reaching across the aisle and having those conversations. I would work with, if President Trump becomes a president again and I'm elected, I will go to President Trump and ask for something. I will ask, and I will work, with Republicans to get what we need as a nation. And I don't play party politics where I'm so, embedded on this side that I don't have a conversation or I can't. That is not how I would operate at all. And that has caused me a lot of problems inside the Democratic Party because I'm not willing to just toe the line and stay on my side and just stand there. No, I'm willing to reach across the aisle and make things happen.
Well, it's that type of thinking that gets things done because when you look back on it, this country was built on compromise. And it's, the Democrats don't have clean hands. Their hands are almost in some instances as dirty as the Republicans.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. And look at, this whole controversy with Ice Cube, for example, right now, where he has, quote unquote, worked, which he has a contract for Black America. He has an idea that he'd like to see implemented. And he put it out there. The Democrats told him to wait until after the election. Hell, our house is on fire. We don't want to wait until after the election. Tell us what you're going to do for us now. Motivate us. Give us something. The Republicans said, okay, we'll take some bits and pieces of it and we'll some sort of compromise. And that's all it is. He's leveraging his influence over this culture. And those of us who love Ice Cube, because I do, I appreciate the fact that he's saying, I have this contract for Black America. What y'all gonna do?
Yeah, I listened to him on CNN the other day, and basically what he's saying is, I just want to be listened to, hear my side of the story, and when you give him that, okay, we'll get around to you. Well, that sounds like business as usual, and we no longer can tolerate business as usual because we know where that leads us. As I said, we're living today on steroids, what I saw in the 1960s. And that's what happens when it becomes business as usual. And a lot of that has to do not so much with our candidates at the very top, but our representatives in the Senate and in Congress who don't push for the things that they need to push for.
And you want to get Black people to the polls. You want to drive the vote. So why not start having these conversations?
Exactly. Well, we're in the midst of a COVID-19 crisis. There's a bill, a movement within the Supreme Court now that they should be voting on in about 2 weeks to end the Affordable Care Act. So let's hear about your policies for healthcare in the United States.
Yeah, we absolutely have to have a comprehensive healthcare system that covers all of us. I'm gonna give you I like stories. So when I traveled around South Georgia in August, I fell in a hole in Macon, Georgia. I was walking and just not paying attention and literally fell in a hole. And I knew when I fell in this hole that my ankle was hurt. Like I was real clear that I'm hurt. I actually had a sprained ankle, came back. I didn't do anything. I hopped around for 2 more weeks because I stayed on the campaign trail with a sprained ankle. When I got back here to Atlanta, I went to the doctor to see, let them x-ray it and see what was really, because it was still swelling. It was swelling the whole time. I go to the doctor. Now, me alone, I have health insurance. My part of my family's plan is $500 alone. I don't have any pre-existing conditions. I'm relatively healthy. My part alone is $500. So I go to the doctor and they said, you haven't met your deductible, so you're going to have to pay for this visit. I see the doctor. They do an x-ray. I need a brace, which I knew I needed something. The brace wasn't covered by my insurance. So not only did I have to pay for that visit, after paying my insurance for the month, pay for that visit and pay for the brace, I get a bill for an addition some monies because when they x-rayed me, my insurance only paid for part of the x-ray. So when we talk about affordable healthcare in this country, we have to be mindful that whether you can afford it or not, you want a healthy population, and we want to make sure that everybody has access to, and that's why I believe in Medicare for all, because we have to have a comprehensive plan that covers all of us.
Well, unfortunately, because I was involved in that system many years ago, when you say Medicare for all, there's certain people that only see a black face when you say that. And the problem is there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of whites in Appalachia and the Appalachia region and other parts of Kentucky, Tennessee, West Virginia, who are suffering because of that. So it's not that sort of it's a sad shortcut mentality where that's what people see. And I think that's why this is such an uphill climb when you say, a comprehensive health care plan for all, because we're all affected. Other countries do it and they do well. And they do well. It's time for change. And thank you for bringing that up. We talked about rural Georgia. Is there anything that we haven't covered yet that you would like to talk about?
Well, I'm a huge advocate for raising the minimum wage in this COVID season. Yeah, you were talking about COVID when, a lot of people that didn't, they work in 2 and 3 jobs. We got to be mindful that $7.25 is just not enough. We definitely have to get us up to at least $15 an hour. So I will be fighting for us to raise the minimum wage in this country.
And equitable education. I don't know whether we really dealt with that enough. I mean, that is just so important. And I think a lot of that begins with educating people about the value of education, which I think is left out. And that starts like kindergarten, first grade.
And access to resources. When I actually owned a little townhouse, when I moved here from Savannah, I was like, I knew I was going to be a homeowner. That was one of the first things I did at 22, 23 years old. I bought my first little townhouse. And then a few years later, I had my first son, and I had my second son a few years after that. And I realized that my children could not go to school where I could afford to live. Just the access to resources, the schools in that area were just, lacking tremendously. So I had to leave a little townhouse that I could afford to live in and could afford to, really wanted to raise my children in, and move out of my own community because my community schools weren't adequate enough for my children, weren't adequate enough for the children that were even there. And I had to move to another part, literally move to Tucker, which is across the highway from Stone Mountain, on the other side of the highway, just so that my children could get a great public school education.
That's sad. And having lived what you're talking about, I can tell you that out of a class of almost 350 people, I graduated 65, and I went to a special school, prep school, and I thought that I was not smart, but I thought I was pretty good. I got there, I was so far behind. but it was because of the quality of education that that us inner city people received, where you can, and we had this example in Atlanta not too long ago, where you can graduate from Atlanta high schools and several years ago, and you were equipped for absolutely nothing. There was absolutely no preparing you for anything. So yeah, that needs to be done. We have covered so much of your platform.
Awesome. I appreciate this
uh,
opportunity. I just really appreciate this opportunity to share my platform, because I'll tell you, with 21 candidates in the race, a lot of us are kind of getting, we're kind of getting lost in the shuffle because there's so many of us. So having these opportunities, I don't take them for granted. And I just say thank you, giving me an opportunity to share where I stand on the issues.
I think your presentation on reparations, I think that needs to be really put out there. I mean, we'll do the best we can here on WCEG. As we know, our programs are archived on YouTube. But that was very, very well done and very well presented. Uh, I usually am not at a loss for questions, but and I think that's a testimony to you, because your answers to questions were rather expansive. And I'd just like to see a little bit more emphasis on your profile about your law degree.
And you're not the only one that has said that to me, that I need to really, really push that and do more with that. The one question that has been asked to me specific to this law degree is the court packing and the idea of, adding more justices to the Supreme Court. And I am not for that. The one thing that I think I learned, I know I did, the setting a precedent. And, if the Democrats go in and say, okay, we're going to now add more justices to the Supreme Court, what stops the Republicans the next time from doing the same thing? And how do we, it just becomes, I believe we should get rid of the lifetime appointments.
I was going to say that.
Yes, that's the answer. Like, don't let people serve for a lifetime. Then we'll have the needed rotation. They can't die there. I mean, God bless Ruth, but
right.
We can't continue to, these lifetime appointments. That's where it needs to stop for me.
I think that's something that I guess it begins in the Congress. I don't know, but that's something that needs to be looked at, because that's that's a problem.
That's a problem.
10, 15 years of service, you get out, you get a lifetime pension, you're done. We move on to the next.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That
absolutely.
That would be great. Well, Mrs. Johnson-Shealey, would you like to make a closing statement now about your campaign?
Yes. So I want to say thank you again for this wonderful opportunity to share where I stand on the issues. And I just would encourage everybody to get out and vote, spread the word. I think this is the most, this is an important time in our history. Having for Georgia to have 2 U.S. Senate seats on the ballot alone is just, we might not see this again in our lifetime. So I'll just encourage people to get out and vote. Look for me on your ballot. I am Tamara Johnson-Shealey. You can find me on all social media handles at Tamara Shealey. And my website is Tamara, Tamara 4 FOR, and Georgia spelled out.com.
Well, thank you so much. And just to amplify on what you just said, this is not hyperbole. You've heard candidates all over the country for all kinds of offices say this is maybe the most important election of our lifetime. And that is very, very true. And I'm going to go back to 2016, which had almost a record low turnout. And you see what position this country is in today. And it was because of voter apathy and people actually believing that their votes didn't count, or when they do count, they don't matter. And your votes do matter. That is why we're fighting voter suppression, voter disenfranchisement. We're fighting all of that now because votes matter and there needs to be changes. Mrs. Johnson-Shealey has brought up a lot of issues that are a direct result of our votes not being taken seriously, or we're not paying attention to who we're putting in office. And we have candidates such as you with progressive thoughts, with new ideas, bringing to the table. and not only just bringing those ideas, but bringing in cogent support for their positions, which a lot you don't see, so that what she says is not just rhetoric. She's able to give you a factual account of what she's talking about. I appreciate that, and I'm sure our listeners appreciate that. And we thank you all for listening to this latest edition of Issues and Answers on the WCEG Network. I encourage you to get out and vote between now and November 3rd. Her name is says Tamara Johnson-Shealey. She is running for Senate in the state of Georgia. Do us a favor, get out and vote. All right. Take it easy. Have a good day. And we thank you for being a part of our listenership. And thank you, Mrs. Johnson-Shealey. Thank you very much.
Thank you.